Welcome back to the show. You are watching or listening to Goal Line Extended, available on YouTube. And wherever you listen to your podcast, search up Goal Line Extended, and you should be able to find it. The podcast can also be found on the Lacrosse Flash website, lacrosseflash.com. I hope you're all having a great day wherever you might be. And joining me next year on GLE is a lacrosse legend, a two-time NCAA All-American in the 1993 Ivy League Player of the Year for Brown University. He went on to be an All-Star in the MLL as well as a player in the NLL and the MILL, the Major Indoor Lacrosse League, playing professionally for a few seasons. Since graduating from Brown, he's coached for a handful of notable college lacrosse programs, an assistant early on in his coaching days before serving as head coach at Dartmouth College, and he is now the head coach for the PLO's Chaos Lacrosse Club, the 2019 Coach of the Year, and he also serves as the American Scout for the New York Riptide. Joining the show, head coach Andy Coward. Coach, I'm so excited to have you on today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be on. Appreciate that lead in.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A man of your caliber deserves that lead. And Coach, I want to talk a lot today about this Chaos team that you have heading into 2021, because I have a ton of questions. Obviously, you added a lot of talent here in the offseason, especially in the midfield during the entry draft. You have 6 picks going into this college draft in a few weeks. We'll get to all that soon. But I want to circle back to last season, the 2020 PLO Championship Series. Your team went 0-4 in the group play, as we all know, granted an overtime loss to the Redwoods in Game 2 after that one was postponed and scheduled for a later date. 4 goals, though, in an impressive fourth quarter for your team, but a loss in that one. And then in Game 4, the overtime loss to the Water Dogs in the game where Blaze Reardon made 70% of his saves, and he did that a few times during the tournament. But going into the knockout portion of the championship series, we obviously know how it ended, the magnificent turnaround, the championship run you guys made. But you made a few changes, a few adjustments to get some different guys, some different looks. But did you foresee the type of turnaround that we saw your team display there in the playoffs, particularly in those 2 playoff games against the Chrome and Archers? Because going into that knockout stage, I personally had those 2 teams as kind of my 2 contenders really to challenge the Whipsnakes. You and your team clearly had other plans, knocked them both out, and with a pretty strong punch. Did you foresee that type of turnaround?
Well, I think that, certainly from those that have seen the PLF from the beginning, I think it's clear that any team can beat anybody on any given day. And we certainly feel very strongly about our respective talent across the board. Certainly it starts with Blaze in the goal. I think that he's proven that he is the best goalie on the planet at this point. And so, his performance is never a surprise to us. I also felt like we were connected in a very good way on the defensive end of the field. Certainly we struggled at times to gain possession of ball. And Tommy Kelly cleaned that up in a very, very good, strong way in the playoffs, starting with, obviously, the Archers game. I think he was arguably team MVP in that semifinal win. I thought he did a very effective job of, minimizing the impact of Joe Nardella in the championship game. But certainly in the round-robin play, that was, face-off success was a challenge for us. With that said, we were very confident that they would turn it around, and he did. But we also were very aware that offensively we were not connected. And so while we, were trying to win every round-robin game without a doubt, we also, from an offensive standpoint, while we were trying to get connected, we also didn't run everything that we had practiced sort of during that week of training camp preceding the start of the round-robin play. And so we knew that there was some schematic changes that we were going to make, and we also ended up making some personnel changes. We've said from day one, we don't care who's on the field for us. We just want to, do everything that we can to maximize our chances of winning. And so we made the appropriate changes, and fortunately, our offense got connected very, very quickly, and we were able to support the goaltending and team defense, in the way that they had supported us through the round robin, and came within, whatever it is, roughly a quarter or so from winning the whole thing.
Yeah, I talked with a handful of coaches. I never got a chance to talk to you, but before last season's championship series, I talked to a handful of coaches. And really, their message really was, we don't want to show everything that we have, but we want to show what we think we're going to use, what we plan to use once we get into that tournament. And really, we want to build off that. And obviously, your team was able to build off that. Your team beat Chrome 19-14 in the final, the highest scoring game and the most goals scored by a single team in the tournament. A very impressive start in that first playoff game, and then a 13-9 victory over the Archers to punch your ticket to the championship game against the defending champion Whipsnakes, who ended up winning later that day. And as you said, you got that chance to play them 2 days later for pretty much all the glory. Your second meeting of the tournament, they got the better of you the first time around. And then this game, really nothing that we expected early on. I think we expected goals and a lot of them. Instead, we got a 4-2 score going into halftime, an absolute dogfight that featured, as we're saying, a ton of saves by Blaze Reardon and Kyle Bernlord, two of the best goalies in the game. That extended, obviously, into the third quarter. Your team won the third quarter. As you did the previous two, had 3-goal lead heading into the last frame, and then something clicked on the other side. We really don't know what it was, but something happened. Zed Williams and the Whipsnakes face-off unit took over, won possession after possession. The Whipsnakes scored Williams scored 5 of the Whipsnakes, 10 unanswered goals, and then that's that. A brief little look back there on the 2020 championship game. But I bring up the championship. I apologize. I know it's the last thing you probably want to hear about heading into this season, but mainly the possession after possession thing, because your team struggled, as you brought up before, in that department during the tournament, in that face-off department. And now with your first round entry draft selection, 8th overall, you get your guy, Max Adler, hoping to go forward here with him as the chaos face-off man. What excites you most about Adler, what he brings to the table, and where do you think his biggest impact is going to lie?
Well, there's no question that his biggest impact is going to lie on helping us win face-offs. That's why we drafted him. I spoke to Max before we drafted him just to get a better feel for him as a human being, and certainly everything that he had to say aligned itself to a T to what our staff and the players in our locker room want, and that's to simply win the PLL championship, and that's the only goal and the sole focus for Max, and that's our only goal and our sole focus as a locker room and as a staff. And certainly his success is very well documented in the MLL and against many of these guys that he will see in the PLL. He trains year-round with Joe Nardella, so we know that he's, getting high-quality reps during the off-season. And it was obvious choice for us once Tommy Kelly got drafted. Tommy Kelly is one of the best face-off guys in the world, and frankly, we were very disappointed when he got picked up by the Cannons, but once that happened, it became very, very clear that Max Adler was somebody that we were going to draft if he was still around at 8, and very fortunately for us, he was. So we jumped at that opportunity and feel that he's got the chance to be the best, best guy in the world. And he's going to go prove it, but certainly in my short conversation with Max, it's very clear that what he's concerned about is team success. He's not concerned with being, quote unquote, the best pogo in the world, the best face-off guy in the world. And that's, exactly what you want to hear as a coach. So we're extremely excited about Max coming to our team.
Bringing in Max Adler here for the 2021 season, hopefully going forward as well. Kind of falling there to you at the end of the first round, some might say. Another guy, though, that I think many of us thought was going to fall, or that we didn't really think was going to fall all the way to the end of round 2. But here we are talking about it. Challen Rogers. Coach, you were able to draft him at 16 overall, a 6'4", 20-pound beast. I can't imagine the damage that he will be able to do on the shore and field. We've seen what he can do in the box transition game. Really just another added dimension to this team in the midfield, another Canadian to mention that. And then how do you expect Rogers to fit in best on this team in an effort to utilize that full skill set that he has?
Well, I think that, first of all, we were very, very shocked that we were able to get him. And we had a plan in place to draft certain personnel. But then we had to alter that plan to some degree when Challen became available. And we were in very close communications with key players on our team. And as the draft unfolded, when Challen became available, that was an absolute no-brainer for us. The fact is, as you referenced, he does a lot of things really, really well. He plays great defense. He's an unbelievable scorer. He's an unbelievable ground ball player. He's physically imposing. He's as tough as you want him to be. He's a phenomenal teammate. Quite frankly, with sort of the hybrid offense that we run, I can see him breaking in to our American line and being a tremendous value add on that line, just as easily as I could see him breaking in to our more of our Canadian heavy line with Audie and Dane. I could see him playing attack. I could see him, playing some short stick deep midfielder for us. I could see him being on the wings and the faceoffs. I mean, listen, this guy is the real deal, and he is the full package. And we would be foolish to not utilize all of his respective strengths to the benefit of our team. And that's exactly what we, are going to do.
Added Challen Rogers, 16 overall, hoping to use his full skill set here in 2021. Before the draft ended, you had the final pick and chose Kyle Jackson, yet another Canadian and Ontario Native American, even more box influence being added to this offense. What impact do you expect him to make on this very deep midfield that you've assembled here over the past 3 years?
Well, Kyle's another guy that we're just overwhelmingly excited about. As a left-handed midfielder, playmaker, he is a guy that we really can see making an impact as well. Again, whether that's as an attackman or whether that's as a midfielder. When we initially looked at him, it's to be a midfielder. We looked at trying to fill Kevin Buchanan's spot. Kevin Buchanan last year played on a line with Dane Smith and Audie Stats, and as a right-handed midfielder, was able to play in our box-style offensive set, sort of on the left side, which is a testament to how good a player Kevin Buchanan is and how great of a teammate he is. And so, assuming that Deemer Glass was going to get picked up by the Cannons, and we were really hoping that he would not, because Deemer had been out the previous year with a surgery, and we were optimistic that he wasn't going to be picked up. But when he got picked up, it really created a need for us, a distinct need for us to pick up a left-handed midfielder and to be able to get a playmaker, goal scorer like Kyle Jackson that already has an immense connection on and off the field with Josh Byrne and Dane Smith and Challen Rogers. We're getting a guy that, even though he hasn't been in our locker room, is very, very familiar with critical pieces in our locker room and on the offensive end. And he is the left-hander that we need. And he does a lot of things really, really well. So, again, I was so pumped to be able to get both Challen and Kyle Jackson, seeing that their respective strengths are going to make us, complete, so to speak, on the offensive end. And I think the fact that these guys know each other already and have some chemistry with some other key pieces on our roster, hopefully will allow us to get connected sooner than the playoffs this summer.
Coach, we're talking about these two midfielders that you just added in the entry draft. But before the draft, another Canadian midfielder that you picked up. You sent attackman Connor Fields to the Archers in exchange for Ian McKay, and you're talking about kind of the familiarity that Jackson and Rogers brings. I mean, Ian McKay lives with Dane Smith and Josh Byrne. So how do you expect him to fit in on this midfield that we've been saying is very, very deep?
It was really tough to give up one of the best offensive players in the world in Connor Fields. He's not only a proven player and an unbelievable talent, but he's also a gentleman and somebody that, is just a great person. With that said, we had the opportunity to pick up a guy that can fill a few different roles for us in Ian McKay. As a left-handed player, he has a chance to break into that second line with Dane Smith and Audie Stats as an offensive midfielder. But he also, having played long stick for the Canadian World Team, we feel that he's a guy that can also be somebody that breaks in and gives us, a level of toughness and a layer of durability at the long stick midi spot to go along with, Matt Reese and Troy Ray as guys that we're rolling out 3 sort of different style of players there, and Ian gives us the ability to provide a different look at that area of the field than what we currently have. And then even beyond that, if he had to, he, I'm sure, could step in and, be have an instant impact as a short stick midfielder for our team. So it was tough to give up Hunter Fields as a proven winner and a proven offensive commodity. And it is a great player, but for us to bring in a player that can impact our team at 3 different positions, who played for Coach Curtis at University of Vermont, and so we know that his intangibles as a person, his mental toughness, his physical durability, his competitive spirit, his team first attitude, all things that are characteristics that you want your locker room to have. Ian represents all of those things. And then obviously already having a relationship with, Josh and Dane and, some of the other guys in our locker room, fully enhanced a no-brainer decision for us.
Coach Towers and the Chaos bringing in Ian McKay, also Kyle Jackson, Challen Rogers, and Max Adler. You sound very excited to be welcoming all those guys. And then talking about some of these guys, obviously, that you're picking up heading into this 2021 season. But you mentioned his name a few times there, a guy that you got the chance to watch play last year after he missed 2019 with an injury. Austin Stotts, his first season in the PLO. What did he bring to the table? How would you assess it? Obviously, you got a lot of high praise you have already for him, but what's the plan going forward to use him? Because going back to the adjustments made in the championship series, it seemed like most of those adjustments were made to get him some more runs and some more looks, a guy that you see factoring in on this team looking ahead.
We're going to turn Audie loose. Audie, what he brings to any team is an unbelievable level of passion for competing. And he is as tough as a human being as I know. He doesn't make excuses for anything. He simply goes out there and leaves everything out on the field. And that, again, is another tangible that's contagious in your locker room. And our guys really responded to Audie's success. And keep in mind, everything Audie did last year, he did with broken ribs. He was like in a, debilitating car accident, not too many weeks before we went to training camp. And during training camp and during these games, he was practicing, and periodically he'd get hit in the ribs, and he would sort of move to the side and take a few minutes. But I can imagine the level of pain that he was feeling, knowing how tough Audie was, and having broken ribs myself. In college, I couldn't even sneeze riding a car, and this guy's out playing professional lacrosse and getting chopped up and managing the pain in a very discreet way. And so our plan is to turn a healthy Audie Stats loose as much as we can, knowing that is going to be something that is going to add another layer of competitive spirit to our team, not to mention the statistics that go along with that. But Audie Stats, again, like other guys in our locker room, he cares about one stat, and that's winning the game. And so, what we found out over the course of round robin play last year is, you want Audie Stats to go out and play lacrosse. You don't want to overcomplicate, your coaching of him, so to speak. This is a guy that plays a very unique style. He's an unbelievable passer. He's an unbelievable shooter. And he does things that not a lot of people can do or would do. And that unpredictability makes him a really tough cover, and is part of the reason why our guys respond so positively to his success, and coaches included. And so we're going to stay out of the way. We're going to turn Audie loose. That's the plan.
Turn Audie Stotts loose. I like the sound of that. Hey, another guy that it seemed like you let turn loose last summer was Josh Byrne. It seemed like he took that next step as a scorer and as the leader of this offensive unit last season, an MVP candidate. Like Stotts, you also bring in Curtis Dixon. It seemed like he fit in very well. As the tournament went on, these guys started to get into a groove. And now looking ahead to 2021, I'd imagine you have to be excited for what this offense should bring to the table. Obviously, all these additions we've been talking about as well.
Yeah, I'm super, super excited. I think Josh Byrne has absolutely, through his play in the tournament last summer, clearly has put himself in a small group of players that have to be considered the best on the entire planet, right? And he just flat out and went and did it against the best players in the world at the highest level when the heat was the hottest. And so we're very, very excited about Josh's performance last summer, but frankly anticipate probably even a better one this summer, and we're optimistic of that. Curtis Dixon, you're looking at a Hall of Fame lock as an indoor player and as an outdoor player. And he's probably a Hall of Fame player in the United States as well as Canadian Hall of Fame. But this is one of the best players in the history of the sport. And to be able to get Curtis last summer integrated with our offense, this is, again, another guy that just wants to go out and win. We knew he was a great goal scorer, but I didn't know that he was such a good passer and played so great within the framework of our offenses. And, when you've got Josh Byrne, who's, again, in the best player in the world conversation on the left side, and you've got Curtis Dixon on the right side, it really creates good situations for us. And so we got to be mindful of schematically supporting these guys in a way that forces teams to make a decision on how they're going to defend these guys. And the fact that both of them are playmakers, both of them are just as good at passers as they are goal scorers, and also just as unselfishly willing to, dodge and hit the outlet and have the outlet be the feeder. It really makes our team, difficult to strategize on how you're going to defend us.
This Chaos offense coming into 2021, very excited to see what you guys have in store. Coach, you also signed Dalton Croson ahead of the entry draft, a former NFL running back. He had stints with the Indianapolis Colts and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but you signed him before the draft, and right away you said that he is hands down might be the most athletic player in the league. The word that you used was instantaneously. He hasn't played any professional lacrosse yet. This would be his debut, and it looks like he'll be heading to training camp with you and your team. How could you see yourself using an athlete like him? In recent comments you made, you talked about probably running him as a defensive midfielder. You recently lost another incredible athlete in Tyson Bell in that expansion draft, a guy that can play LSM and short stick defensive midi. So maybe in replacing his loss.
Yeah, it killed us to lose T. Bell in the expansion draft, and I applaud the Boston Cannons for picking him up. That was a really, really smart decision. T. Bell did a bunch of great things for us. Not only was he a great short stick in the league, he also was a threat in transition, and he could pick up a pole and play at an elite level as well. And so losing Tyson Bell as an on-field player was disappointing, but really, losing him in the locker room was even more so disappointing, as the guys really responded to his approach. The coaches loved his approach. Again, he's a 100% team success-focused individual, and that hurt to lose a guy like that. With that said, we were very, very fortunate to be able to pick up Dalton Croson in the players pool. And again, I stand by everything that I said. You look at his resume as an athlete. This is a guy that averaged 12.5 yards per carry as a high school running back on Long Island, which is very good football. It's a guy that, from an NFL combine standpoint, tested favorably to, Alvin Kamara and
up against a lot of those other running back names.
And C-Mac and Dalvin Cook and these guys that are, the best running backs in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Dalton Croson tests out from a lateral quickness and explosive at a speed standpoint like them, and he's 5'11", 205 pounds, right? And so I stand by that statement that he's, the best athlete in the league day one, 100%. I don't think that's going out on a limb at all. Having spoken to Dalton a few times in advance of picking him up, I feel that his, again, mental approach and emotional approach is exactly what we want. I speculate that he's going to impact our team's short stick committee, but if he comes in and he's able to play within the framework of our schemes and be a proven contributor and somebody that we can count on to run our offense and increase our goal output, then he's going to play offense. And if he better affects our team coming off the wing of faceoffs or playing D-midi or being able to create 4-on-3 situations off of Blaze's saves and defensive stops, then that's where he will be. But we didn't pick up an athlete like that without understanding how much he can be a difference maker in our overall team. And so, we will work to find the best spot for him. And I'm very, very confident that he is going to be on our roster on game day. With that said, we're bringing in 30 really, really good players, and we got to come out of that training camp with 25 guys on our final roster, and we'll be dressing 19 on game day, and it's going to be super, super competitive. But we don't care who we're throwing out there. Our job is to throw the guys out there that we think give us the best chance to win, and that's what we're going to do.
Roster spots this season come at a premium. We'll see if Dolan Croson can find a role on your team and possibly one of those spots. Speaking of filling out that 30-man roster, 6 picks in this upcoming 2021 college draft. Your first selection is at 6th overall, then back-to-back at 14 and 15, and then closing out the draft with picks 19, 22, and 30. A very deep draft, a lot of talent available on the board. We'll see what falls your way, Coach. If it's anything like the entry draft, you should be feeling pretty good about it going into it. But this first pick at 6, there's a lot of very talented players that could be around up there. We're thinking Sowers and Bernhardt. Some of those names will be off the board, but a few polls, most notably JT Giles-Harris, Jared Connors, they could be around. Jake Caraway, Mac O'Keefe, and Ryan Tierney, some of the top attackmen that should be available amongst others. And we can't forget about Jeff Teat. You selected him in last year's PLL college draft and then again in the 2020 NLL entry draft for the Riptide first overall, and he might be available to you for a third time. We will wait and see how it unfolds. But you're putting together your plan for this draft. What's the strategy for this one? Again, a ton of talent. You have 2 very favorable picks in the middle of round 2 and 3 as well. Give us something to speculate here, Coach. What are you looking at in terms of preparing for the draft?
To be honest with you, I kind of exchanged texts with Jared Newman the other day, and I love our current roster. I look at where we're at, and I can't see a glaring need at any position. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to look at bolstering our depth in the areas where the best available players are located. If we end up coming up with a 6th draft and we see a guy like Jerry Connors or T.D. Ireland or certainly Jeff Teat, like any of those guys that are sort of I think generational players. I think that's I don't think that overstates what they've done as college players. If any of those guys are available, we're gonna pick the best players, and we're gonna add depth to our what we feel is already a pretty complete roster, and we're gonna go to training camp, and the best players are gonna be the ones that we go with. Listen, this is hyper competitive lacrosse. It's pro lacrosse with the best players in the world, and these guys need to feel like they have to go out and prove themselves every rep of every drill, and that's what we want. And I think that these guys are the best in the world for a reason. I think they've embraced that, perpetual dynamic of competing for their roles on game day. And so I would expect our players to be ecstatic about anybody that we bring into our locker room, seeing that gets us closer to our ultimate goal of winning the PLL championship.
Ultimate goal of winning a PLL championship. Hoping to do that here in 2021, Coach Towers. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. An absolute pleasure having you on the show. But before I let you go, I need to ask you, because as we've been saying, your team is very Canadian heavy. The one obstacle we might see as we come up on this 2021 PLL season is the situation at the border and quarantining, and whether Canadian players will be able to go back and forth over the border. I've already talked with a handful of players. Ryland Reese, one last week, that said his plan for the Water Dogs, his plan is to stay in the United States. I don't know what conversations you've had with your players, but have you put any thought into how you approach this scenario if it gets, I would say, more serious, maybe in adding depth to replace anybody that might not be able to travel? You also have those 2 players on the military list we are waiting to hear from. So any plan there in regards to how you might approach that?
Well, as of right now, our military guys are good to go, so I'm not concerned about their availability at all.
There we go.
I can't worry about what the Canadian government is going to do as it relates to allowing these guys to go, back and forth out of the country. I remain optimistic that it's going to get worked out. These are professional athletes, and I remain optimistic that the PLL is going to continue to do everything that they can to allow that to happen. And so I plan on having everybody available to us. And so, I just can't control that in any way. So we're just going to be optimistic that it's going to work out and plan accordingly. And if we get news that it's not going to go that way, then we're going to have to adjust accordingly. And we will. That's part of the benefit of having 6 draft picks, is that, you can ideally create some cushion if things don't end up transpiring the way that we want them to. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's our viewpoint on it for sure.
There we go. Coach, I love your optimism on it. I love your optimism heading into this 2021 season, as we're all very, very excited to see you and your team get back out there. Coach, I want to thank you so much again for joining me, the head coach of the PLO's Chaos Lacrosse Club, looking to get after it here in 2021 and hopefully chase that first championship. Coach, thank you again. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks a ton, Ryan. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I appreciate all you do for the sport in general, and certainly for the PLL specifically. Go Chaos.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Coach. I appreciate that.